Of course, Zamboni Showmatch number 1, unfortunately a little bit one-sided, as Kingelman took down Teddy G. I'm apparently actually not... There we go. Perfect. So we'll just switch the scoreboard around here. Beautiful. Spawning here in the top left-hand corner of Typhon Peak's Ladder Edition, it is our green Terran player, the Panzer General, Mortarion. And spawning in the bottom position, the bottom left, playing random, this time spawning as the yellow Protoss, it is ZamEchoNN. I dubbed him the most random player, as that tends to be his strategies that we'll see. So we're going to go ahead and pull up Typhon Peaks for anybody who's not familiar with the map. Our yellow Protoss player spawning down here, and our green Terran player up here. Now we can see that this is, I guess you would call it close by air positions on this map, which can come into play very heavily. There's 2 Xel'Naga towers on this map controlling the center walkway area. There's also these little cliffs above the Xel'Naga towers that you can just put stuff up there, and that can be pretty annoying. There's a whole bunch of destructible rocks that can come into play as well. So as the Protoss player expands, starting down here is your main, out here is the natural, over here is the third base. There's destructible rocks back here into the third base, and right here into the natural, although our Terran player would have to go through these rocks as well. But this sets up a really interesting siege dynamic where you can just set up your siege tanks in this little area as the Terran player and feel fairly safe except for this backdoor area. And then you could either push directly through this choke here or around to the Xel'Naga tower and just set up a really commanding siege position in the middle of the map and just turn this into a really easy split map game. And as you can see, the middle attack paths are just very narrow. The Protoss player just has this little area. So a lot of counterattacks are possible, though by going around the third base, I realize that's a double-sided arrow, around here into the destructible rocks or into the main. So that's just kind of a quick map overview. As we look, we do have a little bit of shenanigans going on from EchoNN early, putting down a very early proxy pylon up here in the top position. Everything else looks fairly normal. Mortarion getting in here and doing a Terran gas steal, which, while not exactly the most, I don't know, normal of things, has worked out well for him in the past. This will really limit EchoNN's early gas timings, and that can prevent things like an early immortal bust, or at least weaken them, or a DT. It completely prevents a DT rush, which is fantastic, or at least delays it enough. If we look back at Mortarion's base, we see putting down a bunker at the top of the ramp just to be safe. I realize the scoreboard's gone. There we go. And going immediately up to a second barracks. Only 1 gas geyser so far, and he's actually only using 1 SCV in it immediately. Maybe just a little bit of a habit, maybe forgetting about that, and he wants to go up to a factory. So both players are in Silver League, so we will tend to see not necessarily more one-base play, but we'll see a lot safer one-base play, where they'll get up just a whole bunch of units. We see Mortarion actually proxying a supply depot, although I'm not entirely sure why that's good. But I suppose it can give him high ground vision later in the game. It does look like the stalker is actually queued up directly there, so he'll be able just to destroy that depot for free. And that doesn't gain too much other than some really random scouting information. I'm also not too sure what this SCV is doing. It looks like he lost his way and is just completely foiled by these destructible rocks through the bane of his existence. Perhaps more interestingly is that this this pylon looks like 2 buildings on the minimap, so I keep constantly checking back there. We do see that depot's just going to go down, and see a little bit of friendly banter in these chat. These guys are friends, of course. We're all in the same clan. These are 2 of the other kind of co-founders of the clan, along with Kingelman and I. So we see EchoNN actually going for, this is a pretty delayed 4-gate, but a 4-gate nonetheless. This can do a lot of damage, especially if Mortarion's not quite prepared for it. We do see he's going 2 racks into a CC. He's already got that bunker up at the front and producing quite a few Marines, or actually he's going double Marauders right now. So he's going to feel very safe ZamEchoNN, meanwhile, I'm not entirely sure what he plans to do. His gateways are finishing up. He's throwing down the robotics facility as well. I'm not sure if he wants to put on pressure or if he wants to expand. He looks kind of like he wants to do both with his probe down here as well as the pylon up here. There's a forge going down as well as another pylon. In the practice games leading up to this tournament, we saw EchoNN just kind of sloppy building placement, and he actually created little choke points for himself that made it very difficult to defend his base against drops. So we'll see if that comes into play again. As we see, this isn't the most clean building arrangement. There's a choke point here, and a choke point here that his units kind of have to funnel through. Mortarion is trying to take the top base, it looks like, which is a really interesting choice, but he's flying directly over this pylon. I'm not sure if EchoNN will notice that necessarily, but it's happening. The Zealot running toward the front right now, and he's going to find a bunker and a bunch of Marauders there to greet him. That's not going to do anything. A little bit of damage done to the depot, but nothing too big. You see, EchoNN has a pretty decent army right now. I'd love to see him expand. He's got more than enough money for it. There it is. Beautiful. So we're headed into two-base play, as we see Mortarion being a little bit more cheeky about his two bases, hiding his up at the top. And if this goes relatively unscouted, that can be very powerful. See, Mortarion has vision right here. He can run that SCV in at any time. We'll see if he remembers about that. Again, I know I've mentioned before, these are silver players, so things that might, or that should be noticed, might not be noticed at all. We do see the observer headed out. He might have spotted that SCV. He did, in fact. Oi, he says, and takes one shot at the destructible rocks and then gets rid of that SCV. So as you see, one worker killed. A good start for EchoNN. We even see that he's up by 7 supply right now, and the observer getting in here and seeing everything, seeing a gigantic marauder force, and that should worry him a little bit, as he doesn't have anything that directly counters Marauders right now. The Stalkers will do okay, and so will the Zealots, but he needs to rely on his force fields in order to do the damage to those Marauders. So that's just a scary force. We do see you going for an Immortal, which is a choice I like against the heavy Marauder force, as the Immortals do quite a bit of damage. Of course, Marauders are also pretty good against Immortals in reverse, but at least early on it's a good choice. Mortarion has his first medevacs out, and he's very fond of drops in any matchup, regardless. Yeah, regardless. Anyway, going up to a third barracks, and this is very nice powering from both players. Look at the units tab, we actually see 8-worker lead for EchoNN. Nothing too worrying, at least for our Terran player. There's the drop headed out. Did EchoNN spot it, is the big question. He should have seen it, but is he preparing for it? No is the correct answer. So we'll see how much damage this can do, or if Mortarion actually remembers about the medevac back here. But at the same time, sending this force around, and now EchoNN should have noticed the move out. This might not be the best positioning for that observer for it, but now he should be aware. Shooting the Zealot at the watchtower should alert him. Now we see more units being warped in, more Zealots to try and counteract all the Marauders, although Concussive Shell, I believe, is done. Yes, so Zealots are the most effective units right now, at least until this charge upgrade finishes. If that can finish before the big move-in happens, it's key. Mortarion actually taking the third command center down here. But in comes the move-in from the Terran player, stims up, running in. He'll get a couple of Zealots. Those are nice force fields, though, from EchoNN, but this isn't the major danger right now. He actually saves a couple of these units with the medevac, but the drop going on back at the natural, and it's doing quite a bit of damage. A lot of probes have gone down, 7 already. Now targeting on the Immortal, and that would be a big snag if he can grab it. It does go down. Now retreating into the medevac, and Mortarion should get out of there. Oh, taking a couple of hits, and he's fine. And that was a beautiful trade by Mortarion. As we see, he comes out of that a little bit ahead in resources lost, and expanding to a third base down here. We'll see how wise EchoNN is to that. Needs to pull some of these probes back into working. There are 7 just kind of standing around right now. This pylon, if we look at Mortarion's vision, he's got complete knowledge of that pylon, perhaps trying to bait Mortarion into warping in a couple of units up here. But the scouting not great from both players. If we look, there was a scan that went down that saw most of the tech in here. And the Twilight Council, I'm not sure why he went charge first, honestly. While Charge does make his army very scary, it's not the most useful upgrade early game, as the scary part of the Terran army is their mobility and his ability to be everywhere with drops. As we see, he's actually starting siege mode. He doesn't have any siege tanks here, but this is really interesting. It's becoming more popular again, siege tanks in PvP. Not, I wouldn't say wildly popular mid-game, but especially early game. Siege tanks can be very powerful before units like the Colossus, like a critical mass of Immortals, can get out. Charge dots are actually pretty good against siege tanks, as they tend to fan out when they charge. So they're not as bad as Zerglings or Banelings that just tend to clump up. ZamEchoNN, meanwhile, doing some nice scouting, though he's sending this Zealot out to the front. He still isn't aware of his opponent's planetary in his third base, and he still doesn't have knowledge of this base up here. It does look like that proxy pylon was taken down. Zealot charging at the front, gauging the relative army strength, and he does see that this is really Marauder heavy. Also of note is that he doesn't have that many siege tanks. There he found another Zealot for free. And we'll see what Mortarion wants to do. I like the inclusion of the SCV in here. He can start repairing these medevacs, which will help out tremendously. And ZamEchoNN may be a little bit worried now, because he hasn't seen a natural. And that's really scary. This is a gigantic one-base force, if that's the case. And this is really all in. So right now, ZamEchoNN's mentality is, I have to defend his push that's coming up. I have to defend it, and then I'm perfect. I've won the game. That's not the case, though. Mortarion's actually up 3 bases to 2, although not necessarily up in workers. He's down by 22, in fact. And boom! The planetary one-shots the probe, and the reaction in chat immediate from ZamEchoNN. And this is going to be costly to displace. There aren't too many workers here to help repair the planetary, but it can still do quite a bit of damage to this army. He needs kind of a critical mass. He could also just sit up here on the cliff and take it down. He's got a couple of Colossus that just popped. There's 2 of them out of his double robo. I've kind of neglected to show some of the tech structures in here. He's up to, it looks like, 8 warp gates, Twilight Council, Robotics Bay, 2 robotics facilities, and 2 forges, although only researching out of 1. So the upgrades right now, 2-0 for our Protoss player, and 1-1 for our Terran. The armory now on the way, which will allow him to go up to 2-2. A little bit supply blocked here, as tends to happen to Mortarion at 121. I'm apparently slowing down the game, so I can't actually point out the Protoss supply except up here in the corner. 151 to 121, ZamEchoNN, excuse me, with the lead. And as we see, that's mostly in workers. A 17 worker advantage for ZamEchoNN, which means that it's only about a 13 to 12 supply lead, which can be easily overcome, especially with siege tanks in this army mix. The Observer has spotted all this, of course, and in comes the movement from the Protoss player. This is before Vikings are out. These siege tanks aren't sieged up at all. There's the stim up from the Bioforce. He's tearing apart these Zealots, but the Colossus just really strong in here. Siege tank finally sieging up. He's taking a bunch of shots at the sentries. This isn't going to be enough, though. ZamEchoNN just rolling over Mortarion now. These Colossus just countered, really. Bunker doing quite a bit of damage in the back, but he's still... There's no damage done to these Colossus. The Immortals absorbing quite a bit of fire. Now he can fire on the Colossus as they're the only things left. And Mortarion's actually going to hold, it looks like. It's very slim. He takes out the last Immortal, now stimming up, trying to take out the Colossus. And... yeah, it goes down. So a nice hold. The natural now burning down, though, from Mortarion. He will start repairing that, so that's going to be fine. Mortarion holds, only down by 12 supply, up 4 bases to 3 now, as he's actually able to hold on to his natural as well. And I feel like ZamEchoNN kind of messed up the engagement. As we look, he's got so many warp gates. If he had a forward pylon and got those Zealots in there, I think right now he's just on top of the production and winning the game. Those siege tanks were critical during the last battle, and now this is what I wanted all along. The Colossus on the high ground just frying all the workers down here at the third, and that's going to be pretty unusable. They actually outrange planetaries. I'm not sure why these Zealots are coming in here. They're just going to take some planetary fire and kind of make this a little bit better of a trade for Mortarion. But